The laughter in the room was light, airy, and dangerous. It had a hollow edge I hadn't noticed before. I had just taken a sip of my sparkling wine, feeling the bubbles tickle my throat, and said something I thought was playful, teasing even. "Honestly, sometimes I wonder if I should just replace you with someone younger," I joked, twirling the stem of my glass. The dinner guests chuckled politely, the kind of laughter that fills in the spaces where awkwardness hangs. But then he spoke. And suddenly the air didn't just shift, it snapped. "I'd rather be old and with you than young and with anyone else," he said. His voice calm but so piercing that it sliced through my joke like a scalpel. The room froze. Forks hovered midair. Glasses stopped tinkling. My heart thudded against my ribs, not in amusement, but in sudden, inexplicable fear. He smiled almost softly and added, "Even if I weren't here, I'd hope you'd never find someone to make you forget me. Because nothing ever could." The silence lingered, suffocating, as everyone processed the unexpected gravity in his words. And then it hit me. The dread, the creeping suspicion I had tried to ignore for months. The way he had been so patient, so quiet lately. The faint traces of perfume on his shirts, the late nights at work, the phone he left face down on the counter. It was all too deliberate, too clean. He wasn't oblivious. He had known. We had been married for 8 years, and in the beginning I thought we were unshakable. There were passion-filled nights, laughter that could fill entire rooms, shared dreams and whispered secrets. But somewhere along the line, the threads had begun to fray. I noticed the little things, the way he'd pause before answering a question, the subtle tension in his posture when I mentioned work or friends. I convinced myself it was normal. Everyone had their off days. Everyone hid little truths. Except that this wasn't little. It started that morning, the day I had almost laughed about replacing him. I had been scrolling through my phone, idly glancing at the messages from someone I shouldn't have been talking to. He came into the room quietly, holding 2 mugs of coffee, his usual calm smile in place. "You've been texting a lot lately," he said. Not accusatory, just stating it like a fact. I froze, the screen glowing in my hand like a guilty confession. "It's nothing. Just friends." I lied, my voice lighter than I felt. "Friends, huh?" His smile didn't falter, but his eyes darkened. "Funny, I haven't seen you laugh at their jokes the way you laugh at mine." I swallowed. I wanted to deflect, to change the subject, but he didn't allow it. He simply waited, patiently, like a storm gathering before it hits. That night at dinner, the tension had been unbearable. I tried to laugh it off with my cruel little joke, thinking I could mask the guilt, the worry, the shame. But his comeback wasn't just a witty retort. It was a mirror. It reflected everything I had been hiding, everything I had been trying to deny. I caught him looking at me across the table. His gaze so steady that it made me feel naked. My stomach twisted. I wanted to vanish, to shrink away, but the world around us, friends, family, the clinking glasses, kept me tethered to reality. Later, when everyone had left, I confronted him in the quiet of our apartment. I didn't mean it," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It was just a joke." He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years I saw the hurt in his eyes. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was betrayal. It was disbelief that the woman he had trusted more than anyone could even think to betray him in such a careless, thoughtless way. "Joke." His voice was low, and every word carried weight. "You've been lying to me. You've been sneaking around, hiding messages, keeping secrets. And you call it a joke." I couldn't answer. My throat was tight, my heart pounding. The truth was worse than any words I could say. I started, but he held up a hand. "Don't." That one word silenced me more effectively than any shouting ever could. The next few days were unbearable. We passed each other in the apartment like strangers. His silence was more eloquent than any confrontation could have been. He didn't accuse me, he didn't yell. He just existed around me, the weight of his knowledge pressing down like a physical force. And I realized in that painful, gut-wrenching moment that he didn't need to confront me. He already knew everything. I tried to act normal, to go about my routine, but every glance, every touch, reminded me of what I had done. He would catch me staring at my phone and just sigh, shaking his head slightly. It was a silent reminder that my betrayal wasn't hidden from him. Not really. Finally, one evening, he sat me down on the couch, the dim light casting shadows across his face. I was expecting anger, but instead, there was a calm that was somehow more terrifying. "I don't know why you did it," he said quietly. "I don't know if it was loneliness, boredom, or just some need to feel wanted. But I know you think this changes everything. And it doesn't." I stared at him, incredulous. "It doesn't." No, his gaze was steady, unwavering. "You want to know why? 'Cause I've always loved you. Even when you weren't being honest, even when you were tempted by someone else, my love didn't disappear. But I need to know if you're willing to fight for us. If you're willing to be honest. Really honest." Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. I wanted to tell him everything. The late-night messages, the stolen moments, the feelings of guilt and shame that had eaten at me every day. But the words felt inadequate, fragile, like they could never undo the damage. I don't know if I can fix this," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I don't know if I can make it right." He reached out, taking my hands in his. His touch was familiar, comforting, yet there was a firmness to it that reminded me of the boundaries I had crossed. "Then start by being honest," he said softly. "No more jokes, no more lies. Just truth. Can you do that?" I nodded, unable to speak. And in that silence, something shifted. Not healed, not forgiven, but the first fragile thread of possibility began to weave itself between us again. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in the apartment began to change. Slowly, painfully, deliberately. I confessed everything, every detail, every hidden thought, and he listened. Not with judgment, not with fury, but with an intensity that was almost unbearable. And each confession, each truth laid bare, was a small, trembling step toward something resembling trust. We didn't speak about the future, not yet. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. But we began to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, the life we had almost destroyed. And then one evening, months later, I joked again. A small, tentative joke about something mundane, almost trivial. And he laughed. Not the sarcastic, biting laugh of before, but a real warm laugh that reached his eyes. And I realized that love, even battered and bruised, could survive betrayal. That forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing to see someone fully, flaws and all, and deciding that their worth outweighed their mistakes. That night I held him close and whispered, "I don't ever want to replace you." He kissed my forehead and murmured, "Good. Because no one ever could." The silence that had once suffocated us had been replaced by something else, something fragile but real. And I understood finally the weight of trust, the cost of betrayal, and the extraordinary power of love that refuses to let go, even when everything seems lost. Even after everything, we were still here. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we could survive anything.